The most recent one that I had a like epiphany about, and why we're talking about this as a segment and my long ass introduction to it, is the other day I was doing pads with Cruden, who's this 60-plus-year-old pad man at my gym who actually was a trainer for my trainer, Crenu, when Crenu was a teenager. He's been there forever. He's very cheeky. He's like very, he's always making a joke about something. He's funny, but a little bit gruff. He was holding pads for me, and he was very positive recently about my power. He's like, you should just right kick and right punch all the time because you have incredible power in both of these things. And I had a cold right before we came down to Phuket, so I was not feeling great during training, and I really didn't want to do pads. But I was doing pads with him, and I felt like I was hitting really hard with my strikes, and I was. But at the end of those rounds, whereas he's usually very complimentary and he's like, great, he was like, today, Mai Mi Lang. I have heard Mai Mi Lang, it means no power, like you don't have power, many, many, many times. And I realized in that moment when he said it to me, because of my actual experience of that pad work and how I felt, that what ties mean, and not every second, but what they mean what they often, that is lost in translation between the denotation and connotation of Mai Mi Lang, is, as a Westerner, as me, as whatever, I always thought that no power Mai Mi Lang had to do with the strikes.
Like how hard are you hitting kicking the pad?
And they'll totally make fun of men. They're like, oh, you went out last night, you have no power, whatever your thing is, blah, blah, blah. And you think they're talking about strikes.
But the consequences of when you get told no power
is you try to hit harder.
You hit harder. Like you start, I'll show you.
And you make yourself more tired. What I realized, because my fucking strikes had power in them.
Yeah.
I was impressed by how much power I had.
Like,
I'm like, I'm doing great given how horrible I feel.
Yeah.
He did not mean my strikes. He meant everything between my strikes, and he actually demonstrated this little, like, kind of diesel noi oatmeal falling apart between things. And it's the lack of power is what in Thai they call Ruup. Ruup is your body or your, like, visage. And so
that's a good word for
between my strikes, my composure and form did not express strength. And so where I was like, my strikes are strong, what are you talking about? No Mai Mi Lang, no power, I'm striking hard. He's like, you're demonstrating your lack of power between all your strikes. And so this Mai Mi Lang thing, which they will use when a fighter has lost too much weight or whatever, it's this whole like, oh, he could have fought better, but Mai Mi Lang kind of thing. It's the same thing as if like you read all the words and you thought it was about the words, but it's actually about everything that isn't said in between. And it blew my mind, this revelation.
Well, it's a term that you had developed an emotional connection and understanding to for years. Like you've been told it, you'll be told this all the time in Thailand.
But understanding what it actually means that you can then practice the right part.
Yeah.
So instead of, oh, I have to hit harder, my strikes have to be stronger, in which case your Ruup between shit is actually going to look even worse. When you understand that it means everything in between, and you're like, okay, I can kick relaxed or as hard as I'm kicking, but don't show anything in between.
Yeah.
That's what Diesel Noi is constantly working on with our fighters. Constantly. Is Ruup.
Yeah.
And is this
Well, talk a little bit more about Ruup, because this is a big area of mistranslation between cultures.
Well, you talk about Ruup because you're going to be talking about Ruup.
No, but I want you to talk about it in terms of like the fact that Thais prize Ruup in watching fights. Like, I don't know, like from my perspective, Western sports oriented, when you see like an elite, my generation, like Michael Jordan or something, Magic Johnson or something, when you watch them move through on the court or across the field, their Ruup, their visage is evident in every step they take.
It's like charisma. It's like how Karahat said that fighters nowadays don't have charisma.
Yeah. their physical expression in the playing zone at all moments, not just when they're hitting the game-winning shot or whatever. Their entire expression of themselves as a person in the ring, like in Thailand, it's in the ring, which includes walking back to your corner and whatnot. That this is really what is prized in assessing a fighter, whether a fighter is winning a fight or whether they're worthy of praise in general. And this is something that Westerners just totally miss.
Yeah.
And including us for many years and still to this day.
I believe that I have lost fights that I thought I won or whatever because like I hurt someone more, or scored more or whatever, but my opponent's Ruup, their composure and their ability to look unperturbed or be like, I'm still on balance, I'm still this. After fights, you're like, she didn't do anything. And it's like, but I know she looked better. Like, I know she looked better.
And you almost say that with like a disdain, like, oh, you just were faking or putting on a performance. But this is not appreciating how much Ruup is prized in, and we'll go into this in another couple segments probably, but probably going to be a theme in this podcast. It's prized as as the truth telling of the nature of a fighter, and it's why Samart is probably considered the greatest ever by most Thais, was because of his Ruup performance throughout fights. They would put him against very savage, aggressive fighters like Muay Thai fighters, and he was able to maintain his fluidity and his movement in a trueness of Ruup. And this is not just to talk about what Ruup means. It's like one of the touchstones of what Muay Thai is, that if you come from other combat sport traditions, you might not understand how important that is. Now, the hard part is to understand this is what it has to be trained in the gym.
And it's what strength is.
But it's not just physical strength, but it's also like strength of presence, right?
Yeah.
Like a very like soft-styled female fighter can have great strength through their Ruup. They're like maintaining the Ruup under duress.
Yeah.
And this is what's so cool is Sylvie is fucking a cardio machine. She's known for her strength, her physical strength and endurance, and Kruden, who's always positive, he's a pretty upbeat guy, especially for a Thai. He's like, no, today the Ruup is broken. And it's so cool because the challenge really is you need to be training your Ruup.
Yeah.
Not training the explosive sound on the pads.
Yeah, I mean, you'll actually see people, Westerners, who don't understand this concept or who don't understand the Thai aesthetic. And there's the like blast your 10 kicks and then put your hands on your hips and pant and walk around.
Yeah.
And it's like that SNL skit with the woman who's so hot. She's got this Marilyn Monroe thing. She's so hot.
Kristen Wiig.
And then she's like slurping her cappuccino and like
breaking the spell.
It's so disgusting. And everyone, like all the men in the office are kind of like confused by the conflict of so hot and so disgusting at the same time. Is that like when you're doing that, you don't know what you're expressing, because in Western culture, showing your struggle or showing your effort is rewarded for some reason.
Yeah.
In Thai, it's a complete break of Ruup, and they do not care how hard you kicked those pads. It's like you basically like just acted like a badass and then pissed yourself. Like it doesn't make any sense.
But I have to say,
hey, so I had this kind of incredible experience at the gym the other day. I was clinching with Champ. Champ is like, I don't know, 16 or 17 years old, and he's very challenging for me to clinch with, and has been. He's been my clinch partner for a couple of years now, and he's just, he used to be smaller. Now he's, or maybe the same size, but now he's bigger, taller, and he's more skilled and faster and all these things. He makes it really, really hard for me just because the challenges he presents in clinch against the way that I clinch makes us a really good team together of clinching because we present challenges for each other. In general, I think that I feel like I do much worse against him than I actually do. I think that when my trainers are watching and other people are watching, they see it as being much closer than what it actually feels like from my end, which is actually part of the skill set that Champ has, is to make it feel like you cannot keep up, even though I think I actually get a lot of good dominant positions and turns on him that I don't give myself credit for. But the other day I was clinching with him and Ajahn Gimyu, who's an amazing man. He was trainer of the year back in the day. He trained some of the best fighters ever. He was trainer to Gansak, Lakin. He trained my trainer, Kurnu, back in the day. He's just very well recognized and renowned for being an amazing trainer. He's 78 years old now, and he's at my gym, and he is interested in me, which is really cool. So he holds pads for me, like technical training, and then he also watches me and tells me things that he wants me to try in my sparring or clinching or things like this. And he was watching me in Champ clinch, and the amazing thing that happened is he told Champ to be more like me. He was talking about Ruup. So Ruup is this very interesting thing that Kevin and I have talked about in our Muay Thai Bones, and I've done some writing about it, but basically Ruup is a loan word from Sanskrit, and it's literally like your form, right? So like a photograph is called Ruup. The classifier for monks are called Ruup because it's just the body. It's like the husk body kind of thing, like a doll. And when you have Ruup Muay, it's literally your aesthetic, or like your visible composure in the fight. So you don't want to break your Ruup. You don't want to like slump or look defeated or look tired or whatever. Those are all breaking Ruup. And so when he was telling Champ to watch your Ruup and stand up straight and be more like Sylvie, he was like, make your Ruup more like Sylvie. And then he added this sexist comment that is not entirely without context of his age and being Thailand and all these things, but he's like, you're clinching with a girl. I'm not a girl. I'm a woman very close to his size, and I'm very strong. He was like, you should be able to maintain your Ruup. Like, you should be able to have this really nice Ruup against Sylvie. See how Sylvie stands up and keeps her neck up and keeps her Ruup really nice. Do what Sylvie's doing. So, huge compliment that he's telling Champ, who fights at Lumpini and Rajadamnern, he's telling him to have Ruup more like me. Fucking awesome, because it's something that I'm focusing on. It's something that I know I have huge deficits in, but I also probably don't give myself credit for the times that my Ruup is super improved. And lately I've been working on like where my hand positions are, and Kevin's like, when you move where your hands are, it completely changes your entire Ruup. So that was a exciting thing for me to have happen, and is kind of like a boost to my confidence going into things that I'm working on for the week, and taking account of it and taking credit for it and moving into it. That's my update. And to me, what kind of designates the Yod Moy of the Golden Age is that they have this kind of, in comic books it's called the silhouette test. In Thai they call it like charisma, sine, and it's like a expression of that person through their Moy, which is really incredible. It's really what I want. For the longest time I was always like, I want to be good, right? Like, you'll never be good, especially in your own eyes. So understanding this Yod Moy ambition of wanting to be able to express myself through my Moy. And so the shift in my concentration has changed to Sylvie 3.0 in this like Yod Moy ambition, which Kevin and I call it growing eyes, and you really get it from going live is what they call it in wrestling, but it's like sparring and moving around in space with people. It's not hitting the bag, it's not doing drills, it's not like the hard work that I can do. You tell me to run up a hill 80 times, I will fucking do it, even if it takes me, days or something. But the hard part is the like
Ruup. Ruup is like how you hold your body, or like your kind of, I don't know, composure. This is really hard. This is really, really hard to do, especially when someone is like trying to take your dignity, trying to hit you in the face, or like keep you off of them, or things like this. It's very hard to keep that Ruup when you have even your own inner critic yelling at you, and that's something that for me has been definitely something I work on. I've been working a lot on my mental training and kind of not being such a dick to myself all the time, and trying to have more of that composure over the years.
Maybe this is the time to add the like Diesel Noi or Golden Age thing. Is that we're talking in ideal terms here. Every gym has different standards of Ruup, different thresholds of what good and like how hard they hold you to this concept, this principle. What we found was when we brought Diesel Noi, who, if you don't know, he's the greatest knee fighter ever, possibly the greatest fighter ever of the Golden Age. We brought him into the gym. He set an electric charge through the gym. That our gym is a real Thai gym. Like, its main focus is raising Thai boys to be stadium champions. And some of the best fighters of Thailand have come out of here. PTT.
Jadukam, who's now called Tawanchai.
Tawanchai, the fighter of the year, came out as a boy, was raised through there. And so the core of the gym is still this real Thai thing, but it's integrated with Western training experiences too. And he came through there, and his main focus was like raising the level of Ruup among the Thai boys.
Yeah.
And one of the more interesting things, and it's captured in your Kai Moi diaries a little bit, right?
Yes.
Was the way that he trained Bang.
Yep.
Tongchai, Krunu's son. He was urging Bank for sure, more intensity, more explosiveness. He's always famous for a very viral pad work round of his from his old days. He's just relentless on the pads. But what was so interesting was how almost more intensity he gives to the Thai fighter after the pad round is over. Like the recovery. The recovery was like stand up straight. Like,
but that's the thing. That's like the gazelle thing, where like if you have like a lion that's hunting a gazelle, and the gazelle is totally fucking out of energy and might just lay down and die. If it does a little like jump thing to show that it still has energy, the lion might quit.
That little kick it does.
It's like, oh man, I can't keep up with that. Forget it. I'll find a sicker one or whatever.
Right.
Is that the thing about Bank and the thing about me that Krunu knows is that our strength is our strength. Like, we are powerful, like enduring fighters, and so he trains our strength. Right. Krunu does not emphasize Ruup the way that Diesel Noi does, but in what Diesel Noi is emphasizing in like rolling.
Okay, so we had a little battery drop out, so we're not quite sure how much we missed. So we're gonna start right at when I was talking about when we brought Diesel Noi into the gym. If you don't know who he is, arguably the greatest fighter ever, definitely the greatest knee fighter ever from the Golden Age. And we brought him into this gym, and for me it was just fucking insane to see him bring in this intensity of training that I personally believe is probably lost to all of Thailand. Like the way that the Hopalong gym trained, or these Muay Thai gyms trained. They trained, I don't know, my theory is that it wasn't crews that made Yod Muay in the Golden Age. It was camps. And camps produced multiple champions not because the crew was teaching this super secret technique. It was because these tempos and standards were kept within a community of boys who were all growing together, and steel sharpens steel in the ethic of the camp.
Yeah, it's like a pack.
Like a pack. And those packs no longer really exist in Thailand, even in like artificially made packs like PK Sanchai Gym or something like that, where they basically buy up the contracts of some of the best fighters in Thailand and try to create a pack. The ethic, the culture of those training gyms in the 90s, I think no longer exists. They're like ecosystems that no longer exist. So when you bring in Diesel Noi, one of the things he brings, besides like technical knowledge, is he brings his memory of the music of his training. And he imposed that music on an already functioning Thai gym with Thai boys that were training to become potential stadium champions. And it was really neat to see him take on Bank.
Yeah.
Bank is Krunu's son. He's a stadium fighter. Everything good?
Yep.
What can you maybe jump in and talk about this Ruup training that he brought to Bank?
Well, I don't know whether it made it on the last recording or not, but I was talking about how when you show that you have more, there are a lot of fighters who have this really, Thai fighters have this really beautiful thing in the way that they progress throughout a fight, which is like, I haven't had to get out of second gear yet.
Yeah.
And that's kind of a femur thing to like, don't make me go harder than I have to, but then you do have another gear. The thing with strong fighters, and Bank is not Muay Khao, Bank is like Muay Mat, he's like a puncher, but he's really powerful. And me as a Muay Khao fighter, I'm always coming forward. This kind of thing is that the thing about us that's exhausting is that we're powerful and that we will keep coming. But if you don't train those moments between things, you're not sending the message, I can do that again. Which Diesel Noi, when he is like on Bank between rounds, and this is just in the gym, in your home gym, nobody's watching, your dad is training you, you're like, I'm gonna go get some water. Diesel Noi is working against that, where it's like, there is no second, even when nobody is in the gym with you, when you're hitting the bag alone and you're walking to get some water, you walk like, I can do that again, I can do this all day. Diesel Noi talked about how he would be alone in the gym when everyone else had already gone home and his training wasn't finished yet because he was like Muay Khao, and he's like, I would cry. He's like, everyone had gone home and I'm doing more knees on the bag, crying. It's like, cry, but you can do that again. Like,
but your Ruup doesn't show that you're crying.
Never breaks.
The Ruup does not show.
And the thing is, it becomes very real. Like, if you have that kind of confidence in yourself from that kind of training, the strength that you have is even more real. Like, if you believe I can do that again, it's so different from practicing like, oh, when is this the last round yet?
Well,
like,
this is so the hard. Really interesting. I mean, Thai training is known as like brutal training. The heat is up. Thais do lots of rounds. They do lots of bag rounds. Especially when they're pushing for a fight, it's world famous. What people don't realize that, and maybe it's even been lost to Thailand in many gyms, is that the real training is between all of that, because it's Ruup that's being trained. It's like, God, it's like you watch a samurai like pull his sword out and slice some bamboo stick 27 times, but it's really, how did he put his sword back in? You know, which is actually a thing, right?
Yeah.
And I'm like, there's a reason for that. Because how you put your sword back in will dictate how you pull your sword out and how you use your sword. It gives you an intensity of focus that elevates everything you do. It's not just about like not letting your opponent see that you're weak.
But there's also,
it's about a focus.
Yes, and it's personal, like it's your own belief of yourself. And what I was
talk about that a little bit.
What I was just realizing just now, thinking about it, because Krunu does focus on Ruup to a degree, not nearly the way that Diesel Noi does. But if you show that you're tired, if you show that you're hurt, if you give like a shit attitude about something, he'll give you more. He's like, okay, now you do 50 more kicks, kind of thing.
Totally.
But if you don't internalize it and have your own autonomy and self-belief about those things, I know to hide pain or hide fatigue because I don't want 50 more kicks.
Yeah.
That's obedience. That's not the same thing as I can do this all day. Like if I had Diesel Noise never breaking Ruup, when Pinu knows I'm exhausted and he's going to make me do 50 more, if I can give him the look that's like, yes, sir, may I have another, like, I'll do 50 on top of that. Like,
exactly.
I can do this all day. Like, you get tired holding pads for me.
Totally.
Like, that's what Diesel Noise is going
There's
for.
a famous samurai, I don't know why I'm bringing up samurais now, but famous samurai phrase, which I really liked, that I sent to you, saying, which was a tiger's skin and a dog's belly.
Mm-hmm.
That, and the dog being a street dog who's starving. And he's like, even when you have nothing in your stomach, you should look like you just ate.
Yeah.
Like you're like wiping your mouth of the feast you just had.
It was performance.
It's that performance, it's that your outside thing. And part of this has to do with Asian culture, which is about face, right? What you show to others is more highly valued in Asian cultures. But the result of that is not just like, oh, just put on a good face. It's asking your soul and your spirit and your mind to ascend to a higher standard, which will eventually be showing itself in your actual strikes, in your actual ability to defend and continue the narrative you're telling in Muay Thai, right?
Yeah.
In a fight.